This episode of Watch It Played is brought to you by Game On.
Looking for great board games?
What about role-playing games?
And collectible card games?
Or miniatures?
Find all this and more, plus great prices and friendly service at Game On in Summerside, Prince Edward Island. If you've come to game on Prince Edward Island, then you've got to come to Game On. Welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. If this is your first time watching our series, let me explain what it's all about. If you're like me, you love watching board game reviews, but if you're also like me, you may find that they don't always help you decide which game to buy next. They just make you want to buy about 20 or 50 games next. And just because Ron Passel and his 17 daughters love a game, will you? There are so many positive reviews for games. How do you know what's really going to appeal to you, especially if you have to choose just one? Even worse, what if for a game you think you're interested in, you find out that there are several positive and negative reviews? What do? Is there an alternative to just watching more reviews? In this video series, we invite you to watch as me and my kids play through a game turn by turn. And we don't just invite you to watch, we want you to participate. If the game allows, we put a seat at the table just for you, and at the end of each video, you can submit the moves you would like to make during your virtual turn. Just post comments in the YouTube channel, and through a democratic, semi-democratic process, a move is chosen and then shown during the next video. Now in this series, we usually start with two videos. This one to introduce ourselves and to go over the rules for the chosen game, and then a second video to show how to set up the game, and then the rest of the videos are actual gameplay. We aren't a review series, but we hope to be a complement to the many great review series already being made. If you're on the fence about a game, we hope that by allowing you to see how the game is played, we can also give you a sense of what it would feel like to play the game. And for many people, that can really determine if the game is right or not right for them. This isn't our first video series, so we hope you check out our playlists for the other games we have played. Also, in particular, if this series has been a help to you, please consider sending a PayPal donation to watchitplayed@live.com, and we will make you an executive producer for an upcoming episode. You can also contribute by subscribing, hitting like, and posting feedback, and we will do our best to answer all your questions related to the game. No matter what they are, and even if they're unrelated. But now, let's get back to the game. In this series of Watch It Played, we're going to be playing Small World. Now, Small World is a game that takes place on a map where you're trying to occupy with your troops as many spaces as possible. Wait a second. This isn't Small World! This is Small World. That's a mess. Okay, well, you'll forgive me for some of the little bit of confusion there, because there are similarities between the games. Well, a few. You are trying to take over a map with as many of your troops as possible. Sometimes you're going to take over unoccupied spaces. Sometimes you're going to be taking spaces away from the local natives. And even better, sometimes you'll be taking those spaces away from the other players. And at the end of each round, for each of the spaces, you're generally going to get one victory coin. At the end of a set number of rounds, the player with the most victory coins wins the game. One of the big differences between Small World and other games like it is that the troops you control are going to be very different than the troops controlled by the other players. And not just because the pieces are different colors, although that can be very pretty, but because the troops themselves are going to come from different races of creatures, like dwarves and elves and zombies and giants. And so those different races are going to have different strengths and weaknesses. You're also going to be pairing those races with random abilities, which again modify the strengths and weaknesses of your troops. And when you consider all the different expansions that come with this game, giving you more races of creatures and more abilities, well, the options aren't limitless, but they almost become more than you could possibly ever play through. And so that's a really neat part of the game. Now, normally what I would do is I would go over the rules, and then I would cover the setup of the game. But I think the rules will make more sense if I do the setup first. So let's do that now. But first, I have some cleaning to do. The first thing to notice about the game is the game board itself. It's divided up into spaces with these white lines, and there's some different icons that show potential abilities and special benefits to those particular locations, and there's a turn tracker in the corner. But actually, this is just one of the boards in the game. If you're playing a 5-player game, this is what you would play. If you were playing a 4-player game, you'd flip it over. There's a different map on this side. This side actually has less spaces. Remember, it's a small world, so less and less space for fewer players. And then, if you have less than 4 players, there's actually a smaller board for 3 players. And if you had 2 players, you flip it over, and there's an even smaller. Well, it's the same size, but again, fewer spaces to play on. The other big difference here is the number of turns that you're going to play changes depending on the number of players you have. To keep track of the rounds, you get a little crown token like so. And at the end of the last player's turn in each round, you just advance the token by 1 until you get to the very end, and that's when the game ends. The game also comes with lots and lots of little tokens for your troops. Now I've put these little tabs in here. These don't come with the game. They just help you pull up and be able to lift out the tokens when you need to. So when you pick your army, say I picked skeletons, I would get to collect a bunch of these little skeleton tokens and then use them to place on the board and take over different areas. There are also Lost Tribe tokens, like this, that are not controlled by any of the players. But at the beginning of the game, any area that has this symbol in it receives 1 Lost Tribe token like that. So I have placed the 10 Lost Tribe tokens on the 10 areas that have the Lost Tribe symbol on them. Then you want to look for each area that clearly shows Mountainscape on it and place a mountain token on those locations. These are going to add to the defenses and make these locations harder to conquer than locations that do not have a mountain on them. There are also a variety of victory coins in the game. Now, this is all the different denominations, 1, 3, 5, and 10, but there are many more of each than what I am showing you here. At the end of each turn, you are going to collect a certain number of victory coins based on the number of areas you control on the map. As well, you may get additional coins based on the race and abilities of your troops. There are also several tokens that are used by different races or abilities in the game, but we'll discuss those when they come up during gameplay. The game comes with a number of race banners for each of the different races in the game, like the elves, or ratmen, or trolls, and a whole bunch more, including skeletons. These banners are shuffled up and placed in a pile at the beginning of the game. The game also comes with a variety of different ability badges. These badges are shuffled up and then randomly paired with the different races. So you could have commando skeletons, alchemist skeletons, fortified skeletons, there's a whole bunch of them. You could even end up with merchant skeletons. That's right, skeletal salesman. I'll tell you right now, whatever they're selling, I'm buying. What's that, Mr. Skeleton? Overpriced? No, those don't seem overpriced, huh? I'll take 6. Once you've shuffled up your race banners and your ability badges, it's time to lay out 5 of each. So we're going to have orcs to choose from, Amazons, ratmen, skeletons, humans, and the top race banner sitting on our pile of unused race banners. So there's going to be 6 different races we can choose from at the beginning of the game. Now we also have to lay out ability badges. So we're going to have swamp orcs, heroic Amazons, flying ratmen, diplomat skeletons, commando humans, ooh, and this sounds scary, berserker giants. So the first player is going to get to choose one of these combinations as his starting army. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to receive 5 victory coins. Now this is important because when you're choosing your first army, you may have to pay for it. If you want to take the first army at the very top, that's free. If you wish to take the next one, then you have to place one of your coins on the army you skipped over. If you wanted to come down here and grab the ratmen, you'd also have to place a coin on the Amazons, and so on and so on. So if you really wanted to get these giants, you'd have to place a coin on each one of the other race ability combinations leading up to the one you want. Now if the next person comes along and they want to have the ratmen, they're going to have to do the same. They'd have to place 1 token here, 1 token here, and then they could claim the ratmen. But when they claim the ratmen, they also get to take the coin that's sitting on the ratmen. So then the third player could come along, take the swamp orcs for free, and collect 2 victory coins. Also, it should be noted, when you claim one of the race and ability combinations, you remove it from the line and then all the races and abilities shift forward. So if we remove the ratmen, the skeletons would move up, the humans would move up, The Berserker Giants would move up, and then that would reveal a new possible race and ability combination beneath. To explain what you do on your turn, I'm going to assume that we've chosen the very affordable, free Swamp Orcs. Now all of the race banners and abilities have different symbols on them, and those are supposed to help remind you about what the abilities and races can do. At this point we don't need to go into what the different symbols mean, but I do want you to pay attention to two very important numbers, the number 4 here and the number 5. Every race banner and ability badge is going to have numbers like this. You add them together, and that is the number of tokens you collect that match that race. These are the tokens that you're going to be placing on the board to take over different areas and to defeat your enemies. So if this was the beginning of a game and it was our turn and we had our 9 orc tokens, we could start taking over this map. You begin by entering the map through any area that is touching the edge of the game board. Or if an area is touching water that is touching the edge of the game board. So you could start by entering this space here because it's bordering on water that touches the edge of the game board, but you couldn't start here because this location is not touching the edge, and although it is touching water, this water is not on the edge of the game board. So to take over an unoccupied space is very simple. Unoccupied spaces are things that don't have any tokens on them. So for instance, this has a symbol on it, but it doesn't have a token. Tokens would be things like mountains or these lost tribes. If I wanted to take over this space, I would just have to place 2 of my tokens in that area. It always requires 2 tokens to take over an empty space. I still have tokens left over, so I can continue my conquests. The next area I take over must be bordering with the area that I already conquered. So I can take this one over, this one, or this one. Let's say I want to take this unoccupied space, just like before. It takes 2 tokens to take over an unoccupied space. Now that wasn't terribly exciting, but let's say we want to now take over this mountain area. Notice the mountain has a token on it. When you take over an area with any number of tokens on it, you still have to spend your initial 2 tokens and then an additional token for each other token on the location. So to take over this mountain area, I have to spend my initial 2 tokens and then an additional token for the mountain token. I can now claim that area. Now again, even with a mountain on it, that wasn't exactly a thrilling conquest. Let's say instead we want to take over this area which has a lost tribe member on it. To do that, like before, we always have to place at least 2 tokens on the location, plus an additional 1 for every token that's sitting on that area. So I need at least 1 more token. But there's a problem. I don't have any more tokens. Well, that's where the last component comes into play. This is the reinforcement die. If you have at least 1 token left over, and you want to take over an area that you wouldn't technically have enough tokens to conquer, you can place the tokens you do have in that space and then roll the reinforcement die. If you get 1, 2, or 3, then that would be like having 1, 2, or 3 additional tokens. If you roll a blank, then it means you get no bonus. So I just have to roll at least this, and then I would take over that location. If this had, say, 2 Lost Tribe tokens on it, or 2 of another kind of token, then in order to take over this space, I would have to place my 2 initial tokens, and then roll at least a 2. A 1 or a blank would be a fail. If I succeed, then I succeed. I don't actually get additional tokens to place on there, but it's as if I had enough tokens to beat it. When you conquer an area that has race tokens on it, at least one of the race tokens is destroyed and put back into the tray. Any other tokens that are there, that are perhaps owned by other players, they get to then take into their hand. To illustrate that a little more clearly, let's pretend we hadn't gone first at the beginning of this game, and that the skeleton player had already gone and invaded coming into the map this way. Now if it's our turn, and we wanted to enter the map here, remember, 2 tokens to take over an unoccupied space. Now let's say we wanted to occupy this location. Again, we would need 2 tokens to begin, and then 1 for each other token. There's 3 skeletons here, so we are going to have to place 3 additional orc tokens. Once we've taken over that location, 1 of the skeletons goes back into the tray. The other 2 goes back into the player's hand. With my remaining 2 tokens, I could attempt to take over this mountain space. Remember, technically I should have 3 tokens to take it over. But I'll place my 2, roll the die, and I got 3 additional reinforcements. So that is more than enough to take over that space. Now I get to do troop redeployment. I can pick up every token as long as I leave 1 behind on each space that I control, and now redistribute those tokens on the spaces that I control. So I could say put 3 here, maybe put 2 here, maybe put another one here, and 1 here. Now that I've used all my troops to attack, and then had a chance to redeploy them, I can then score my victory points. You get 1 victory coin for each area you occupy. So in this case, I would get 1, 2, 3 victory coins. Additionally, the other player who I kicked out of this location, remember he got to take 2 of his skeletons back in his hand. He now, at the end of my turn, gets to redeploy them wherever he would like, as long as they are on locations that he currently controls. Like so. Now let's look at our race banner and ability badge again, because when I scored that last round, and I gave our orcs 3 victory coins, I ignored the 2 particular benefits that this race and ability gives you. For orcs, any area they conquer that was not unoccupied, so when we took over that skeleton area, we get an additional victory coin. As well, every area we occupy that is a swamp, we get an additional 1 victory coin. So looking back at the game board and knowing what we know about the Swamp Orc's special abilities, we can now properly score this. Yes, at the end of the Orc's turn, he would have received the 3 victory coins, 1 for each location he occupies, but he would have gotten a bonus victory coin for occupying a swampland, as well as a bonus victory point for taking over an area that had been occupied by another player. He also would have gotten his Orc bonus if he had conquered this location, which has a Lost Tribe token on it. That means this is an occupied location, even though it's not controlled by a player. So let's skip ahead to the Orc's next turn. Now at the beginning of his next turn, he gets to pick up all of his tokens as long as he leaves 1 behind in each area he occupied. Sort of like when we did troop redeployment. He can now use these tokens to conquer new locations. So let's say he spent 3 to conquer this location here, and then an additional 3 to conquer this location here. Now during troop redeployment, he would gather up these 2 and these 2 and place them wherever he wants. Let's say here and here. The Orc player now gets to score his area. He gets 1 victory coin for each location he occupies. So he occupies 5 locations. He also occupies a swamp, which gives him a bonus of 1. And because he conquered a location that had an occupier, he gains another victory coin, which gives him a total of 7 victory coins this round. Skipping ahead once more to our Orc's turn, he would pick up his additional tokens, leaving 1 behind in every space, and now he has 4 tokens to conquer new locations. So he might conquer this location, and then come down here and conquer this location. Now hopefully what you're noticing, as he's conquering new locations, his troops are getting thinned out. He has less and less orcs to leave behind to defend. And remember, I've been skipping ahead to the Orc's turn. In between his turns, his enemies are probably taking over some of these locations, defeating them and removing them from play. At some point, the Orc is going to realize his troops are becoming ineffective. And at that point, he has an option. He can put his race in decline. If you choose to send your race into decline, you are not allowed to do any conquesting during that turn. Instead, you flip over your race banner to show that it has gone into decline, and you also flip over your ability badge. Once these have been flipped, they no longer generate the special benefit that they once generated before your race went into decline. Once you declare that your race is going into decline, any location where you have more than 1 race token must be reduced to just 1 race token. So we'll remove these ones here. And then you also have to flip over all of your race tokens. So these remaining orcs stay on the board, and this player still controls these locations, or rather occupies them, but they will not be able to do anything with these tokens. At the end of this turn, and at the end of subsequent turns, any remaining tokens in play will still score 1 victory point for each location that they occupy. And so now the Orc controller would receive victory coins for each location he occupies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 victory coins. But again, no bonuses for occupying this swamp, because the swamp ability has been flipped over. Now at the beginning of the Orc controller's next turn, he or she can choose a new race and ability combination. Again, paying additional victory coins if he or she wants a race ability combination that's farther down the list. Once the player chooses that new combination, they would collect, again, combining these 2 numbers, that many tokens that match that race, and again, enter the board for from one of the edges and begin taking over more of the locations. So now that player may begin entering the board over here with his new human race, conquering new locations of the board. At the end of his turn, he will get points for the new locations he has conquered, including any of the special abilities and benefits related to his new active race and ability, and then also score points for where the rest of his declined race still resides. A single player can never have more than one race in decline at a time, so if the player now wanted to put his active humans into decline, he would have to remove the Orc race banner from play, putting at the bottom of the stack of remaining races, along with the ability badge at the bottom of the stack of the ability badges. Additionally, as only one race can be in decline at a time, any remaining in decline orcs would now automatically be removed from play. And those locations would no longer add to the victory coin total of that controlling player. So those are the basic rules. It feels like that was a lot. I hope you're not too overwhelmed. Don't worry, it gets easier. In the next video, I'm going to introduce you to your two very fierce opponents. And then I'm going to let you watch them take their turns first. So you're going to get to see players pick their races and then deploy their troops onto the battlefield. After that, you'll get to see what races remain, and you'll get to see two new revealed races. And then I'm going to let you guys post your suggestions for which race you would like to take and how you would like to deploy them. Now, if you're reading along and you see somebody else who's suggesting something that you agree with, just give them a thumbs up. Whichever of the strategies gets the most thumbs up, that's the one that I will play for you guys. So then in the videos that follow, we'll start by showing what you guys chose to do first, and then we'll show what your opponents did in response. Then you guys will get to again vote on what to do next. This means that each video should cover one round, which is 3 turns, and because there are 10 rounds in the game, the video series shouldn't be much longer than 10 videos long. If you have questions, and I'm sure you do, you can start posting them in the comments below, or if you think I made a mistake or left out something important, let me know about that as well, and I can update it in a future video. If you have questions about the specific races and abilities, I'd hold off on those. I'll definitely address them when they become relevant. Unless, of course, you're really keen, you can go to the link that's in the description for this video, takes you to a PDF, and you can read up on all the different races and abilities, and you can start scheming. Until then, we'll see you next time.